So after a pretty good first week on the tips and predictions, I gotta say my second week it's been absolutely appalling. I I got every single one wrong. Like how did GWS choke that lead harder than Mia Khalifa used to choke on the hub back in the day? Like what actually happened, man? I've got a mate who actually is a massive GWS supporter. Yes, he is a massive GWS supporter. You heard that right. And he was texting me. He was at the local RSL. And I swear to God, there was like 10 blokes around him just like hugging him and telling him everything's going to be all right, like that one Bob Marley song, because he was not in a good state of mind. 2 back-to-back chokes, one of which has just come to the Brisbane Lions, who scored like 16 points. Again, how is this team so inaccurate? I watched Eric Hitwood like 10 meters out directly in front absolutely butcher it so bad. It smashed into the post. I thought that post was going to break in half. I just don't understand how Brisbane can be so inaccurate, but yet they keep getting the job done. Could you imagine if they weren't the most like inaccurate team we've seen in ages? They would be... Man, they would have won fucking 1,800 premierships by this point, and I'm kind of certain on that. But after going 3-4 in my first week of tipping, 0-2 in my second, do I have much right to tell you guys my tips and predictions this week? Probably not, but I'm going to do it anyway. And we're starting off now with the Sydney Swans versus Port Adelaide Power. 7:40 p.m. at the SCG on a Friday night. Again, I could not believe the Hawks could not get the job done against Port, but also in saying that, Port Adelaide against Geelong were not themselves. And the reason I say this is because usually, in my opinion, Port Adelaide have been notoriously not the worst team at handling pressure. And I mean, they barely lost to Richmond in 2020, which is one of the greatest pressure sides that we've ever seen. And to come out and get smashed by Geelong, who are a mediocre pressure team who turned into the LeBron of pressure teams that night, was insane. So I kind of figured against Hawthorn, I said in the last video, if they could withstand the pressure that Hawthorn would provide, then yes, I think that Port Adelaide could get the job done. They did it really well. They handled themselves. They take on Sydney this week, who I believe the Swans have not beaten them since 2016 or something crazy. I don't know if that's true, but Sydney went to Port Adelaide and they got flogged by like 70 points only 7 rounds ago or something. I can't even remember how long ago it was, but a lot of people are actually tipping Port Adelaide now. But what I say to this is a very different Port Adelaide team. Again, Marshall is not playing, who played a very good role in the previous week. Dan Houston, arguably their best player to some, definitely a top 3 player for Port Adelaide, an All-Australian, 2-time All-Australian, in fact, will not be playing again this week. You've got Zach Butters, who is still a little bit hurt. Jason Horne-Francis was injured about every time you looked at him last week. I think Sydney have to get the job done against Port Adelaide eventually. They just have to get it done. Again, I know that Sydney have not beaten them in a long time, and in fact, they actually got smashed by them the last time they played them. But this is a different game now. This is at home. Port Adelaide are a much weaker side than I believe when they played them last time. Sydney are on a roll. They have been playing some consistent footy over the last couple of weeks. I just think if Sydney don't get to the grand final this year, what a bust it would be. So I just think Sydney get the job done. They cruise to the grand final, where they will be playing either Geelong or Brisbane. Again, this game is on a Saturday night at 5:15 p.m. I don't know who the fuck decided or tried to cook with that, but that is going to be one of the weirdest times I have ever seen. It actually makes me want to go to the biggest bridge in Melbourne and do a backflip off it and try and be Tony Hawk. And it's not going to work. I don't know what the fuck who tried to cook with that 5:15 time. But again, Geelong are the most surprising team to me in probably a couple of years, because I didn't know if Geelong were going to make the 8 this year. I don't even actually remember where I tipped them, probably just a little bit out the 8. But I had a mate who was constantly telling me they're going to make the top 4 and Max Holmes was going to turn into this generational player. He would literally be telling me this while we're on the rowing machine at the gym, and I'm just trying to do my workout and listen to Lady Gaga, and I've got this guy absolutely talking shit, saying Max Holmes is going to be this great player and Geelong are going to make the 4. And wouldn't you know, that is exactly what happened. That is legitimately what happened. Max Holmes is one of the better players in the AFL right now. Literally was a midfielder. He plays halfback again now, which he's just transformed in that position as well. And it's so funny because one of the biggest knocks on Geelong is they had a very weak midfield. So what do? They decide to take out arguably their best midfielder, Max Holmes, and move him to the halfback. And everyone was like, what? Like, how? That doesn't make any sense. And then all of a sudden, Max Holmes is cooked off the halfback. His run, poise, and decision-making is flat out phenomenal. And you've got this thing now where Geelong have included all of these role players into their midfield around a 34-year-old Dangerfield who's playing some of the best footy I've seen him play in a couple of years. And all of a sudden, Geelong are back in a preliminary final playing against the Brisbane Lions. And I got to say, I know Brisbane have improved at the G. They actually played really well against Collingwood there. I'm still going with the Cats, and I think this is going to be a 2022 grand final replay. Sydney Swans versus Geelong Cats. And again, I tipped the Swans last time. Will I be tipping the Swans this time? You'll have to wait until next video if that does happen. Usually one team does shock though, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Port Adelaide versus Geelong granny. That's a grand final rematch that's been in the making since 2007. It could be a Brisbane versus Sydney grand final. Don't think that's ever happened before. That would be pretty hectic. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't really see the Lions getting the job done. They're too inaccurate. And Eric Hipwood, they've got one of the worst, I think. They've got one of the best top 16 players in the league. Like, if you were to look at every team's best 16, Brisbane could be the best in the league. But then their 17 to 23 men, they struggle with so much. Again, Eric Hipwood, I do not rate as a player. I don't think anyone rates as a player anymore. Logan Morris, I actually really like, but you can tell he's still got a lot of learning to do and didn't really play that good in the finals. You know, Jack Payne, I don't mind as a key defender, but he got tortured last week's game. Wilmot is okay. Leicester is okay. They're just average players. It's not like a team where you look at Richmond back when they were winning the 3 flags and you looked at their team from top to bottom and you're like, there is not really a single problem with this team. The only person people would say was a problem was Jason Castagna, and now that he's retired, Jesus Christ, we actually see the impact he made on Richmond, and it was massive. I mean, a goal to 2 a game and one of the best pressure forwards in the league. I would kill to have that on Richmond right now. We don't have any of that, man. I got to watch Ryan Mansell every week, and no disrespect to him, but I don't think he's Jason Castagna. I don't really know. Again, I'm tipping Geelong and Sydney this week. I'm going pretty safe. I don't know. Sue me. Anyway, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like. My dog's tail keeps popping up in the background. Subscribe to the channel. Comment your thoughts and opinions on this all down below. Check out my gaming channel, IRL/following channel, if I haven't already said that. My dog is hella distracting me. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.